everyone. In this video, we will read and understand second part of the chapter, The Comet by Jayant Narlikar, chapter 10th of the book It So Happened. Before that, let's have a quick recap of part first. In part first, we saw that Dattada, who was an amateur scientist, discovers a comet with its 8-inch telescope, which he calls Divyachakshu. After confirmation by Indian Institute of Astrophysics, the comet is given the name Comet Datta after its discoverer. A British scientist named Mr. James Forsyth writes a paper based on Dattada's discovery. He mentions that Comet Datta is headed towards Earth and a head-on collision between Earth and Comet Datta is unavoidable. James Forsyth and John McPherson, who is the defense advisor, have a conversation regarding the impending calamity. A conference of international experts is proposed to discuss the measures to avoid this calamity. This is what we saw in part first. Now let's see part second. Dattada is invited to the secret conference. How to change the course of Comet Datta is the scientist's hidden agenda. Dattada and the defense advisor become close friends and share a secret. Since Dattada had discovered Comet Datta, he was also invited to the secret conference. And the agenda of the conference was how to change the course of Comet Datta. There, Dattada meets the defense advisor, Mr. John McPherson, and they become close friends, and they also share a secret. What was that? We will see in the chapter. By the time they finished their deliberations means discussion, Sir John dropped him at his hotel off Regent Street. It was 1 a.m. Sir John dropped Mr. James Forsyth. So here we are talking about Mr. James Forsyth and Sir John McPherson. By the time they finished their discussion, Sir John dropped him to his hotel. It was 1 a.m. There was hardly any crowd on the street, but when James looked up from his window, a star-studded night sky greeted him. Somewhere amongst these stars was Comet Datta heading for a collision with the Earth. It was hard to believe the calamity of the future on such a peaceful night. For a moment, James wondered if he had done his sums right. So when Mr. James looked at the night sky, it looked so peaceful, and he thought that somewhere among these stars is Comet Datta, which is headed for a collision with Earth. The sky looked so peaceful that it was hard to believe that there is going to be a calamity, a collision in the future. And for a second, Mr. James doubted his own calculation. Whatever doubt James may have had about Sir John's efficiency were quickly dispelled. Dispelled means disappeared when he reported for the conference and found that all the experts listed by him were there. When Mr. John McPherson mentioned secret conference of experts of the world, Mr. James doubted whether it was possible in such short span of time or not. But all his doubt was gone when he reported for the conference. When he went there for the conference, and he saw that all the experts listed by him were there. There were astronomers, computer scientists, nuclear physicists, space technologists, biologists, all were there. And Sir John's special invitee was the man who had started it all. It was Mr. Manoj Datta, the discoverer of Comet Datta. The conference lasted 1 week and went on under total cover of secrecy. So it went on for a week and it was totally secret from rest of the world. First, the experts checked and rechecked the calculations done by Mr. James Forsyth and the latest observation about Comet Datta. Also, they studied. He was right. There was no escape from the direct hit predicted by him. So after the calculation, they came to the conclusion that Mr. James Forsyth was right. There is no escape from the hit, from the collision that he had predicted. And there was a small chance that Comet Datta may just graze the atmosphere. That means just touch the atmosphere of Earth and not collide. But it was a very small chance. And in that case, the loss of life and property would not be total. It will not be a complete destruction. But this slight respite was hardly reassured. Respite means relief and reassuring means convincing. Enough for taking no action. But it was only a small chance of that, and it was not convincing enough not to take any action. Having decided that some action was needed, what form should it take? The expert dismissed defensive measures. Defensive means saving oneself from others' attack. like living in underground bunkers. So after deciding what action should be done, the expert they dismissed. They did not agree to any protective measures that people should be sent to underground bunkers because it was simply not practical. So the only course was to take offensive. Offensive means attacking action. Comet Datta should be marginally deflected. Deflected means to change the direction after hitting from its path by giving it a push. So it was decided that Comet Datta has to be changed from its path by giving it a push. Now, how was that push be done? The expert calculated that the bulk of destructive nuclear power available on the Earth would be needed to achieve this mammoth task. Mammoth means huge. A gigantic nuclear explosion suitably placed, suitably directed, and suitably timed could do the trick. So it was decided that a big nuclear explosion, which was completely calculated very carefully, will do this trick of deflecting Comet Datta from its path. This could be done by placing the nuclear payload in a spaceship. Payload means equipment. Sending it to the intercept. Intercept means stop or block the approaching comet, and detonating it by remote control. Detonating means making it explode. So it was to be done by loading all the nuclear equipment in a spaceship and then sending it to stop the comet in the path of the comet, and then exploding it there by remote control. Success or failure, secrecy must be preserved. So whether the project is a success or it's a failure, it should be done in total secrecy, not to be discussed with the world. Finally, a timetable was drawn for the operation, which was code named Project Light Brigade. So a timetable was made and the code name of the project was given Project Light Brigade. The important dates were October 10, dispatch the spacecraft with the payload unless by then the comet is already destroyed by natural courses or has changed its path due to unforeseen reason. So first on October 10, it was decided to dispatch, that means send the spacecraft with all the equipment unless by that time the comet is destroyed by its own natural reason, which was the chances of that was very grim. November 15, rendezvous with the comet and detonation of the payload. Rendezvous means meeting place. November 15 was the date when the comet and the explosion material would meet and there would be explosion. December 15, if the experiment failed, this was the day the comet would hit the Earth. If it succeeded, this was the day the comet would pass by at a near but safe distance. So December 15 was the date when the comet was supposed to hit the Earth, and if the experiment had succeeded, the comet would just pass by from a safe distance. Now the success of the experiment depended on how massive, that means how big the comet was. Nobody could estimate it. Everybody hoped that it was just not very massive, not very big. Do you think we will succeed? Dattada asked Sir John McPherson if he thought we would succeed. He asked for his opinion. During the week, the two had developed considerable affinity for each other. Affinity means fondness. So during that week, the two had come close to each other and developed fondness for each other. To his question, Mr. John McPherson replied that, Mr. Datta, I will give you an honest answer. I am not buying any Christmas presents till December 15. So he was not sure whether the operation would succeed or not. He just answered that I am not buying any present till December 15. Dattada toured the British Isles for 2 weeks after the conference, and he had a pleasant time visiting observatories and exchanging views with amateur as well as professional astronomers. For the next 2 weeks, Dattada enjoyed touring the British Isles and other places. And on his return, he was greeted by the inevitable vast crowd of friends, social leaders, students, and the usual hangers-on. Hangers-on are people in a meeting, usually who are invited and who try to appear to be very friendly with important people. So Dattada was an introvert person, but when he came back, he was greeted by all these crowd, which he did not like. Loaded with garlands and bombarded with questions from the press, he somehow made his way to the waiting car. He was although given a warm welcome, but he was not a very social person, so he made his way to the car which was waiting. Now, in this part, we will see that Dattada returns home to a warm welcome and a ceremony which is not a scientist's delight. A secret communication sends him rushing to the local sweet shop. Indrani Devi says that Koka, their 8-year-old grandson, has saved the world. Her husband is seriously puzzled. So, Dattada comes and a warm welcome is given to him, and there is a ceremony also which he did not like that much, and there had been a secret conversation which made Dattada run to the local shop. Indrani Devi, Dattada's wife, she thinks that Koka, their 8-year-old grandson, has saved the world, and Dattada is very puzzled. He couldn't believe. He is just questioned what was that. Arriving home, Dattada found another crowd gathered under a pandal. Pandal is a kind of canvas under which some function happens. He glanced questioningly at Indrani Devi. So he couldn't understand what was that for. So he questioningly glanced at his wife. And surely she knew how he hated crowd. Indrani, obviously uneasy, offered the explanation. So Indrani Devi was not very easy with the gaze of her husband. And she answered, I have arranged a yagna and called priests to bless you. Yagna is a kind of prayer. So she said that I have arranged a prayer and I have called priests to bless you. On that, Mr. Dattada questioned, but why? Just because I left the shores of India, because I just went away from the country. You know that it is no longer a taboo. Taboo is actually something which is not permitted religiously, socially or culturally. And Dattada told his wife that it is no longer considered a taboo. In olden days, very old days, going out of your country was considered a taboo. So he explained that it is no longer a taboo. And in any case, you know my views on these kind of meaningless rituals. So he didn't believe on such kind of rituals. So he said that you know my views. Now Indrani Devi looked at Shivaji Babu, who was the younger brother of her husband. And Shivaji Babu coughed and explained, we have all been very disturbed since you discovered the comet. So Guruji has recommended a Shanti Yagna to pacify the evil spirit behind the comet. We are all waiting for you to perform the yagna. So he explained that we all were waiting for you because comet brings evil. They are evil and they bring bad luck, which we have seen in first part. And their Guruji, their priest, he had recommended a Shanti Yagna to calm down the evil spirit. And we all were waiting for you, he explained. Then Dattada asked, may I know what specific advantage there is in this ceremony? Dattada was outwardly, he appeared to be calm. From outside, he appeared to be calm. And he said that what specific advantage this ceremony is going to bring. The comet you have discovered will not cause any ill effect on the earth. On which he got the reply that the comet that has been discovered by you will not have any bad effect on the earth. On this remark, Dattada cannot hold himself for long and he blew up. That means he shouted in anger, don't you know that this is all superstitious? It is all a belief which is superstitious. It could be condoned in the olden times. That means it was disregarded in the olden times, discovering a comet. But not so in modern times. In modern times, it is not that much hated. Comets are known to be what they are. Their movements, their forecast, it is precisely and by mathematical calculation, it is calculated. And a statistical study is done. And visits of comet have no correlation with the disasters or calamity on earth. He tried to explain that. And then he said that all this is, of course, futile. That means fruitless, of no use. But my part was to explain, but it is all useless in front of you and likes of you, as you have never even read any elementary books of science. So he just shouted that since you people have never read even an elementary, that means basic book on science, you will not understand this. Now Shivaji Babu, he quietly interjected. He tried to interfere that, but our wise forefathers recommended such yagnas. Our ancestors, they have recommended such yagnas. Since his return from London, Dattada was in regular correspondence with Sir John McPherson. He was in regular communication with Sir John McPherson, and their friendship had grown out of their appreciation for each other's virtue. Apart from appreciating each other's virtue, their outlook, their friendship had grown more. Sir John admired, he appreciated Dattada's scientific outlook, while Dattada admired his discipline and efficiency. and their correspondent never mentioned Project Light Brigade, although once in a while Sir John would hint at its progress in a subtle manner that Datta would understand. So while their conversation, they never mentioned Project Light Brigade, but sometimes Sir John would hint on the progress in a very subtle, that means in a very in a manner which nobody would understand. Only Datta could understand it. Meanwhile, Comet Datta was going on its predicted path, and in due course of time, it also developed its tail. It circled round the sun without breaking apart, nor did it evaporate. So nothing happened. It did not evaporate. It was on its continuous path. And the scientists on the Project Light Brigade therefore knew that the threat of collision was now very much real. Since nothing else happened, so the scientists who were there in the Project Light Brigade, they knew that the collision is going to happen. It is inevitable. In the middle of October, Datta got a letter from Sir John in the mid of description of meeting of Royal Astronomical Society, the unseasonably warm weather, the opening matches of the football season. That means in the middle of all the discussion, Datta spotted the sentence in which he was eagerly looking for. He wanted to read that because they did not mention Project Light Brigade directly ever. So there was some code words communication about the project. So it was written, the charge of the Light Brigade has begun. Let us hope for the best. That means the spacecraft has been launched. The project has started and let us wait for the best. But will it achieve the rendezvous in time at the right place? Will the remote control detonation work? What if the gigantic nuclear pile fails to fire? So there was no assurity of the project to succeed, and there were still questions that will it meet at the right place? Will the remote control work? Will there be a giant nuclear explosion, or will it succeed or fail? Datta could not share his anxiety with anyone around him. So he could not share his opinion, his worries with anyone around him. And he had to participate from outside in all the puja ceremonies, in Diwali celebration and other festival. His sole daytime relaxation was in the company of Koka, his 8-year-old grandson, and of course at night look through Dibya. So in days he used to relax with his 8-year-old grandson, and at night he used to look through his telescope Dibya. He was regularly monitoring the comet, and now it was clearly visible even through the naked eyes. On December 18, a special messenger on a scooter from the British Council brought in an urgent telex message for him. Telex is an international system which was used in old days. It was a special way of sending written message. So on December 18, there was an urgent message on scooter from British Council for Datta. The telex operator in Calcutta had wondered what was so special about it to make it so urgent. So he was just wondering what is so special to make it so urgent. But on reading it, Datta lost all his lethargy. Lethargy means laziness. He lost, as soon as he read the telex message, he lost all his laziness and he ran to his favorite Rasagulla, the sweet shop. The message read, I am confident now of buying my Christmas present on December 15, John McPherson. So this was the hidden message by John McPherson, that he was confident of buying his Christmas present on December 15. That means the mission was successful. The project was successful. On December 15, Comet Datta came closest to the Earth at a distance of 80,000 kilometers. Millions saw it and admired it. Only a handful knew how close they had come to total annihilation. Annihilation means complete destruction. So December 15 was the important date on which Comet Datta was very close to Earth. Millions of people from Earth saw it, but only few knew that how they had escaped total destruction. Now, when the comet had gone far away and was seen no more, Datta felt it safe to discuss and comment on with his wife, and he said, "Now the comet came and went. Are you satisfied that no major disaster took place that can be attributed to it?" Attributed means that can be given to it. So he said that, now are you satisfied that comet has not done any destruction? I agree that there has been no major disaster, but there could have been some. Do you know how they were averted? Averted means avoided or prevented. Indrani Devi said with quite confidence. So she said that I knew. I know that there was no major disaster and there couldn't have been one. Do you know how it was prevented? Now, Dattada looked at her. Did she know? How could she? So he just looked that did she know that the comet was about to collide? But how could she? He had never discussed about Project Light Brigade to her, at least not consciously. I don't understand, what do you mean? So she said, he said, I don't understand, what do you mean? And the wife replied that it is very simple. There was no disaster because of the yagna at our house, because of the puja we performed. Then Dattada said, but I never performed the yagna. Don't you remember? I refused to have anything to do with it. So he said that I too never performed any yagna. Don't you remember that I just refused. I just said that I don't want to be a part of it. And Indrani Devi said, of course, I remember that. But we found a way, or at least Guruji did. He said that if you were unwilling to perform the yagna, it would be all right if a descendant of yours, descendant means a close relative, children or grandchildren of your did it. So Guruji said that if you refuse to do it, a close relative of yours can do it. So we got Khoka to deputize. Deputize means act on behalf of you. And it has worked. Isn't Guruji clever? Indrani's voice had a ring of triumph. So he said that since you refused, Khoka, your grandson, he performed in place of you. And it worked. Isn't Guruji clever? Dattada formed a mental picture of Khoka performing the yagna, uttering mantras dedicated to him, which he did not understand. Dictated to him, which he did not understand, pouring ghee at specific intervals in the fire, offering flowers. So, Dattada could picture how Khoka must have performed the yagna, uttering mantras which he couldn't understand, and pouring ghee and offering flowers. And then at the same time, another picture came in front of him. The picture changed to the assembly of scientists at conference, analyzing the problem, devising solution, executing them rationally and efficiently. Rationally means with logic, with a reason. So these two pictures came side by side in front of him. One picture of his grandson performing yagna and other picture of scientists discussing about the problem and trying to come to a solution. It seemed hard to believe that both the pictures were different aspects of contemporary human society. Contemporary means of the same period. So it was difficult to believe that both the pictures are from the same time period. Dattada was aware of the gulf that separated the rich from poor, the educated from illiterate, the privileged from underprivileged. But this gap between the rational and the superstitious seemed to him far wider. So he was aware of the gap between rich and poor, educated and uneducated, privileged and underprivileged, but this gap between logical and superstitious, it was far wider, far bigger than rest of the gaps, far more sinister. Sinister means dangerous and harmful. Will human society ever succeed in eliminating it? He just thought, will human society ever succeed in removing this huge gap between rational and superstitious? Dattada did not have any answer to it. This chapter is by Jayant Narlikar. So finally, the collision was averted, but the question of superstition and rationalism remained in the mind of Dattada. These are the question answers which you can go through after pausing the videos. So what do you think, children? How was the collision averted? Did yagna had anything to do with it? Do let me know your opinion. What do you think about it? Have you ever faced any such problem in which you have to question the belief of people, the superstition of people, or you have to question the rationalism, the logical reasoning? Just let me know. This was the last chapter of the book. All the best for your upcoming exams. Bye bye. Take care.